Seasons, greetings everyone. It is the Simstress. Long time no hear. It's been a hot minute since I recorded a video with a voiceover. Couple months if I'm calculating correctly. It's been a little bit busy over here. Been making a lot of big changes. I've been switching some things around for work and family and home, and everything's mostly settled and doing pretty well. And without getting into too much detail, just say that I am doing my very best to live my very best life. So I hope you are. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving if you are celebrating Thanksgiving this past week. And if not, I hope that you are having just a great week in general. If you are gearing up for the holiday season, best wishes over the holidays. And if you don't celebrate the holidays, best wishes for the best December you've ever had. We are continuing, finally, the Time Traveler series 1940s with a fantabulous person who should have been featured. I know, I don't want to hear about it. He should have been featured Halloween week. And while I have had this video ready to go for ages without a voiceover, it was just not possible. So, with that said, I hope you'll accept my apology for rolling it out multiple weeks later. I really didn't think it would take this long, but I've been kind of following my bliss and doing what I need to do when I need to do it, when it feels right. And this finally feels right, and I'm hoping that it is received with a lot of love. Today's guest is Master of the Macabre, the King of Horror. No, not Stephen King. Before that, the actual king of the screen in the B-horror genre. The incomparable, the amazing, the guy laughing and talking in the middle of Michael Jackson's Thriller if you were born much later than I was. Today's infamous guest is the Honorable Mr. Vincent Price. Vincent Leonard Price Jr. was born on May 27, 1911 in St. Louis, Missouri, the youngest of 4 children to parents Vincent Leonard Price, the president of a national candy company, and Marguerite Cobb, née Wilcox. Vincent's grandfather was the inventor of Dr. Price's baking powder, the very first cream of tartar-based baking powder. It became the Price family fortune. The Price family heritage was Welsh and English, and they could boast that they were direct descendants of Peregrine White, the very first baby born in colonial Massachusetts. She was born on the Mayflower as it docked in Provincetown Harbor. Vincent attended the St. Louis Country Day School and Milford Academy in Connecticut. Finally, he graduated from Yale with a degree in English and art history. He taught for 1 year before entering the Courtauld Institute of Art in London. He was hoping to obtain a master's degree in fine arts, but he was instead derailed into a life in the theater. His first professional appearance on stage was in 1934. By 1935, he was performing with Orson Welles' Mercury Theater. Price broke into film acting in the late 1930s as a character actor. He made his debut in the 1938 film Service du Luxe and made his first horror film in 1939 in Tower of London with Boris Karloff. He played Joseph Smith in Brigham Young, 1940, followed by a role as a prosecutor in The Song of Bernadette. He quickly made a name for himself acting as a priest in The Keys of the Kingdom in 1944, later earning great acclaim in the 1944 film noir blockbuster Laura, opposite Gene Tierney. He later reunited with Tierney in the drama Leave Her to Heaven in 1945 and in Dragonwyck in 1946. Price became quite good at playing a villain in film noir in films such as The Web and The Long Night in 1947, Rogue's Regiment 1948, and The Bribe 1949, but he had not yet had a starring role. It would be 1950 before Vincent Price would star in The Baron of Arizona as a con man. He took a stab at comedy in the 1950s film Champagne for Caesar, simultaneously appearing in a radio series called The Saint from 1947 through 1951. As the 1950s progressed, Price found himself in horror roles much more regularly, including the lead role in House of Wax. This was a three-dimensional film about a homicidal wax sculptor that ended up in the box office year's top 10 in 1953. He worked in radio dramas and thrillers for a period of time, in such stories as The Tingler, and acting in the popular adventure series Escape. Price also did a fair amount of work for CBS Radio's long-running series, Suspense. Sound familiar, friends? He starred in The Mad Magician in 1954, and then the classic monster movie, The Fly, in 1958. He appeared in the sequel Return of the Fly in 1959. Also in 1959, he starred in House on Haunted Hill, one of my favorites. Vincent also continued to accept roles outside of the horror genre. He appeared in The Ten Commandments in 1956, and he also began dabbling in television programs such as Science Fiction Theater, Playhouse 90, General Electric Theater, and in 1955 through 1956, appeared 3 times in a religious anthology series called Crossroads. The 1960s saw a time of low-budget horror and films that can perhaps be categorized as Price's cult classic years. He signed on with American International Pictures, where he made the iconic House of Usher in 1960. He was raking in cash at the box office and earning his title as the King of Horror. Films based on the horror fiction of Edgar Allan Poe became a staple for the actor, including The Pit and the Pendulum, 1961, Tales of Terror, 1962, The Comedy of Terrors, 1963, The Raven, 1963, The Masque of the Red Death, 1964, and The Tomb of Ligeia in 1964. He starred in The Last Man on Earth in 1964, which was the first adaptation of the Richard Matheson novel I Am Legend. Price also performed in some tongue-in-cheek comedy films such as Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine in 1965, as well as its sequel, Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs in 1966. In 1968, he starred opposite the future Dame Patricia Rutledge, who had an extensive acting background but is most well known for her role in British sitcom Keeping Up Appearances as Hyacinth Bouquet. In 1964, Price acted as narrator for historic drama Tombstone, Arizona. He also acted as narrator for an Australian TV series called If These Walls Could Speak, which discussed the background of historic buildings. Price was the voice of each building as it told its story to the audience. Price also made regular appearances on the Hollywood squares throughout the 1960s and made frequent guest appearances on television shows such as The Red Skelton Show, Daniel Boone, F Troop, Get Smart, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Vincent also had a recurring role on the Batman TV series as villain Egghead during 1966 and 1967. In the 1970s, Vincent continued to act in various horror-related films and television shows. He hosted and starred in the BBC radio series The Price of Fear. He even made a cameo appearance in a Canadian children's program called The Hilarious House of Frightenstein in 1971. Later in 1971, Price appeared in The Abominable Dr. Phibes, later appearing again in the sequel, Dr. Phibes Rises Again, in 1972. This was followed by horror comedy Theater of Blood in 1973, in which he portrayed a serial killer. Later in 1973, he played himself in Mooch Goes to Hollywood. Vincent's personal life included 3 wives and 2 children. He was married to American actress Edith Barrett from 1938 through 1948, giving birth to son Vincent Barrett Price in 1940. He was married to Welsh-American costume designer Mary Grant Price from 1949 to 1979, giving birth to daughter Victoria Price in 1962. Finally, he married Australian-American stage and screen actress Coral Browne in 1974. He remained with Coral until her death in May of 1991. In 1975, Vincent and Coral appeared together at the Queen's Theatre in London's West End. Later that year, they also starred together in a BBC radio play called Night of the Wolf. 1975 saw a marked decrease in Price's work on screen. He opted instead to do more voice acting and narrating. Among such jobs was a monologue for the Alice Cooper album Welcome to My Nightmare. He made a handful of television appearances through the 1970s, including brief scenes in The Brady Bunch, Here's Lucy, and The Muppet Show. By this point, Vincent had become a pop culture icon of horror. In 1977, Vincent accepted the role of Oscar Wilde in a one-man play called Diversions and Delights. He took the play on tour, and in the summer of 1979, he ended up performing the play on the stage of the Tabor Opera House in Leadville, Colorado, where Oscar Wilde himself had given a lecture some 96 years prior. He ended up performing the play on stages all over the world. Many of his friends and family members considered this to be the best acting performance of his career. In late 1979, Price once again starred by his wife's side in a CBS television series called Time Express. Before the year was over, he had also hosted America Screams, a documentary about roller coasters, followed by Mystery Night, which he hosted for Sears Radio Theater. He was a noted roller coaster enthusiast, by the way. In 1982, Price did the voiceover work for Tim Burton's short film Vincent, as well as the globally acclaimed spoken segment for Michael Jackson's Thriller. Later that year, he appeared in Gilbert and Sullivan's Ruddigore. In 1983, he appeared in Bloodbath at the House of Death and House of the Long Shadows, in which he appeared all together for the first time with Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and John Carradine. They had acted together previously in different pairings, but this was the first time with all of these amazing men in one production. It was quite a beautiful thing to see. One of his last large roles, which would become a favorite of his, was the voice of Professor Ratigan in Walt Disney Pictures' The Great Mouse Detective in 1986. From 1981 through 1989, Price hosted the PBS television series Mystery. He then provided voice talent for Hanna-Barbera cartoon movie The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. He was a roller coaster enthusiast and hosted more than one documentary about them, as well as making cameo appearances in horror/Halloween themed commercials for products like Tilex, of all things. In 1984, Price appeared in Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, and in 1987 he starred in The Whales of August with classic Hollywood divas Bette Davis, Lillian Gish, and Ann Sothern. This film appearance generated his only award nomination. It was the Independent Spirit Award for Best Supporting Male. Price was inducted into the St. Louis Walk of Fame for his work in Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands, which debuted in 1990. Burton's film was his final piece of work in the industry. Some interesting information about Vincent Price includes the fact that he had a deep love of art. He had roots in the art world and in art history and degrees. Not only had he studied art history at Yale, he was also an avid collector. eventually acting as the Indian Arts and Crafts Board chairman. In 1957, Vincent and Mary Grant Price donated 90 pieces of their own private art collection, as well as a great deal of money, to establish the Vincent Price Art Museum at East Los Angeles College. He wanted students to experience original artwork and be inspired. Over time, the couple ended up providing over 2,000 original pieces to America's first teaching art collection. It now contains over 9,000 pieces valued at over $5 million. Vincent Price was also a gourmet cook. He authored several cookbooks with his second wife, Mary. 2 of the cookbooks from their collection were still being reprinted as of 2016, including a foreword by daughter Victoria. Price even hosted his own cooking show for the BBC called Cooking Pricewise, the Original Foodie. Toward the end of Price's career in film and television, he began suffering from Parkinson's disease and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, aka COPD. His symptoms were very pronounced during the filming of Edward Scissorhands, which hindered his shooting schedule. It was also the reason he eventually left his position as the host of Mystery in 1989. Vincent Price died at the age of 82 from lung cancer on October 25, 1993. He passed away in his home in Los Angeles, California. He was cremated and his ashes were scattered near Point Dume in Malibu. Some interesting facts beyond all the ridiculous dozens that we've already discussed. His daughter, Victoria Price, wrote a biography titled A Daughter's Biography, which was released in 1999. In it, she detailed his original feelings about the German Republic early on, the Third Reich. He believed Hitler would bring back German pride, and he allowed himself to be swept up in his violently anti-Semitic cause for a very brief time. However, Price began to frequent outings with a new friend group soon after that, which included New York City intellectuals of the 1930s like Lillian Hellman and Dorothy Parker. The result was that he became exceedingly liberal, anti-Nazi, and a strong supporter of President Roosevelt. Victoria recounts in her book having seen her father sob so hard that he fell off of their sofa upon hearing the news of Roosevelt's death. Price went on to denounce all forms of bigotry and prejudice and stood for a nation that supported civil rights for all. He fully supported daughter Victoria when she decided to come out as a lesbian, and even became an honorary board member of PFLAG, Parents, Families, and Allies of LGBT Americans. Victoria later told an interviewer that Vincent himself had confided relationships with men when they were discussing her own sexuality. Vincent was a multifaceted man who was intelligent and worldly, but always willing to learn and champion a good cause with his platform and his celebrity, as well as his wallet. There are too many interesting facts to mention in this video, but as always, I encourage you to go on and follow some of the links provided in the description. You just may be surprised by what you find. And with that, I want to tell you that there were some, usually I go real deep in their childhood, all of my subjects' childhood and adolescent years, and kind of how they got into their little niche in acting or whatever their profession became. And in Vincent's case, there weren't all that many details, and a lot of it seemed to be stuff that just would have made the video unnecessarily long. So I decided to err on the side of caution and present you with all of the exciting facts that people who know of Vincent Price would want to know. Some of his filmography, some of his little side ventures, the fact that he really did appear as a child who grew up during this era, not the 40s, but the era when Vincent had already become an icon and he was older and established, literally you couldn't watch anything that was horror related without Vincent's face or a cameo or some kind of voiceover or narration or just his cackling laugh in the background. He was synonymous with horror. You couldn't think of the horror genre and not think about Vincent Price. And I really wanted to portray that in his story today. I will include some other biographical facts about him in the description. As usual, you can always read up on that, and definitely a link to his daughter Victoria's book, where she talks about having grown up with Vincent and what that was like. They obviously had a pretty good relationship, more than a lot of people can say with their dad, yours truly included. So that's kind of a nice angle. A lot of times these celebrities have rifts with their children, and they seem to stay close for a good majority of her life. So that's really refreshing to hear, as well as his son. He was a pretty interesting dude with lots of interests. I feel like maybe he could have lived another 100 years and never have exhausted all of his interests. He probably would have loved to live into the cyber age. He would have been making TikToks, no doubt. So with that said, I'm going to leave you with a bunch of awesome clips of Vincent and his work. Some work in its entirety where I could find it for free. And as always, it has been a pleasure. This one seemed to go by super fast. Don't you think? Again, you can't answer me, but I'll talk to you anyway. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing very well. And I hope to continue the series. We are building on this, it's kind of like cul-de-sac shape that I've made here in Windenburg on the island. It's like their own little neighborhood. Already Vincent has started having a relationship with Jean Tierney next door. Let's just say that. He has this lovely veranda on the tilt of the corner of the neighborhood there. And they have been hanging out. They've been doing a lot of dancing. I think you'll see a little clip of that later on. Dancing and eating dinner together. It's been very romantic. Of course, in real life, that did not happen. But we can dream, we can imagine in the Sims world. So enjoy watching that and enjoy watching the rest of his build. As always, I welcome questions. If you're here to troll, oh, you wouldn't have made it this far in the video, but if you did, don't bother, because that's not why we're here. I do hope to come up with at least 3 more guests for the Time Traveler 1940 series. I have a list in my head to choose from, but as you just saw, I have been so insanely busy, which means if I do put one together, I make no promises. I may do another short video before the end of this year. It may not be a time traveler video, but I do intend to finish the 1940s series, at which point I plan to probably discontinue Time Traveler and maybe do some isolated biographical videos as time allows at that point. I'm not sure about the suspense series. I would really like to continue it. It is, to be perfectly frank, very time consuming, even though I'm passionate about sharing old time radio with my audience and the historical aspect of that type of entertainment, which I love dearly. It does take a lot of time and energy, and my last video, which I spent quite a bit of time on, got a really, really low viewership, and that's a little bit worrisome. So if you're into old time radio and you know somebody who's an enthusiast, please give me a shout out, share some links. We've got a couple of them out there already. I already had one queued up to do next that I think is a really, really good one, a scary one. And I would really enjoy doing it if time allowed. That one may at least make it into the works at some point. But again, no promises. We've hit the part of the house, I think, where I've started to build it. I had rebuilt this entire section of the house and cut it out of the video. It's a lot of craziness. Would I have done it the same way if I did this house again? I don't know. But, it worked out. And Vincent and Jean seemed to enjoy it. So at any rate, I'm so glad to be back. I hope to see all my familiar faces in the comments. I love you guys that come back and watch and comment and love all of the vintage stuff and all of these amazing people that have shaped our lives as we know them. Vincent is definitely one of those people, and I hope if you don't know much about him that you'll go and check out his work. He really was a phenomenal human being, and I got to give him props for just how he was and how he was willing to turn on a dime and learn new things and expand and grow. Really inspirational to me in that respect. So enjoy the rest of the video. I hope you guys are, as always, happy, safe, and healthy, and that you have a beautiful day.